Okay, I'm recording. Response video to Nick. Kind of like being back in the conversation. That's good. um, yeah, this is really getting. I think there's some concepts here we got to cling to, but we got to blueprint this thing because it's all getting tripped over. I mean, you can see it in your own comments section. People are all over the map, and even in what you're pointing to. I mean, okay, the other guy's video is about resource depletion and overpopulation, which are a problem. But I think we could agree that that's only a couple of ingredients of this perfect storm dilemma, and that there's something else going on here. That would be a reason for the economy to slow down. That wouldn't be a reason for it to brick wall. And there's brick wall. This thing looks like a brick wall. It doesn't look like a bump. It doesn't even look like a hill. It doesn't even look like a mountain. It looks like a vertical brick wall. An impassable structure. And so there's something else going on. I guess I would sort of argue that what's going on, as I have argued, is that the monarchy thing has basically happened again. We don't have a king, but we have a ton of nobles. And they're lousy economists. They're lousy managers of a society. They're really good at raping and pillaging and taking and consuming, but they really suck at doing anything for civilian life. And that's what's happening here, is the whole thing's going to crumble because the nobles don't care about the infrastructure. They don't care about the civilian world. They don't care if they all die of cholera in a way. And that's really dumb of them. They're not doing the Henry Ford thing. They've kind of ignored the idea that, well, I can't make money unless I got people that can buy my shit. So I got to give them enough money to buy my shit. And they're kind of throwing that out the window. Because that's kind of what nobles do. Nature of the beastie. Yeah, I mean, I liked, people talk about free markets, and free markets are what we had. And free markets created empires. That's what they do. They'll create empires. So there has to be something to prevent that from happening. There has to be something to prevent this consolidation of control. And you're sort of arguing that there's only two things. There's wrong control all the way this way, and there's wrong control all the way that way. And we can't come up with any system that's got some kind of balance. And rules of the game. I mean, that should be the theme. What should the rules of the game be? That's what we're talking about, right? It's a system. It's got to have rules. And yeah, so we're simplifying something like architecture. We're saying these are the rules of architecture. This is how much weight steel can support and all that. We're taking something kind of complex, and yeah, we're going to have to reduce it to something simple, because people don't want to get degrees in architecture. Myself included. I don't want to have to explain all of physical dynamics to be able to argue or advocate for a different strategy. And it's really, I don't even want to have to gain all that knowledge. And on top of that, I don't want to have to try to impart it to the rest of the world in 10-minute videos. That's kind of impossible. And if there is a part 2 to this video, same old routine, I'll link in the description box. It's on the website. All right. So I've attempted to try to get us to look at this by using metaphors like baseball or soccer or some other game. And I could argue that establishing rules is what makes the game work. You figure out what things are broken, how things get out of control, and then you say you can't do that, and then the game works. And so I think like you could say, okay, players can't take steroids. It's against the rules. Okay, and there's a reason for it, because it's going to destroy the game, because then everybody's going to become an atomic. They're going to have like nuclear-powered baseball players or something. People will inject themselves with, monkey tail residue or something, and it's just very destructive. And so you say, no, you can't do that shit. All right, that's not part of the game. And I could argue that that could be like having a rule against legacy wealth, against inheritance. You could have another rule that says, okay, you can't use a steel bat, or one made out of titanium or something. Yeah, and so that'd be a rule like, yeah, you can't make more than $1 million in any given year. in income. I mean, we can create rules that make the game playable, and it's this idea that it has to be completely, that you have to have like somebody running every single player on the field is nonsense. All you have to do is set up rules, have umpires, and let the game happen. And we could come up with all kinds of metaphors, like what role do the managers play? Because the game does have managers, and it has all kinds of different things. But I mean, we don't need to sit there and only have these two choices of saying anything goes or nothing goes. And those aren't the two choices. I mean, you can keep the incentives, you can keep the motivation, you can keep the competition, you can keep all kinds of stuff, and all you're saying is the competition is going to kill people. We're not going to fight with swords. We're going to fight with boxing gloves. I mean, isn't that sensible? It's just saying let's reduce the carnage, let's reduce the waste, let's take the harm out of the game, let's make it harmless, and we are not doing that. All right. The other point I wanted to make was this thing is not the system we've had hasn't worked by a rational definition. I mean, yeah, some of us have lived really nice, but for the majority of the human race, it hasn't worked. It's just been tons of exploitation, tons of abuse and waste. We've had wars, horrible waste of human life and suffering and the whole thing. Billions of people living in subsistence existences. I mean, it's been a failure, and now it's going to be a bigger failure. So that's more of the context to view this thing in. It's not going from some kind of working system to some sort of system that can't work anymore. No, it's going from a bad to worse. That's where we're heading. And it was always bad because the premium wasn't on the... But look, just Nick, even in your own rhetoric, you sound sometimes like you're saying an IOU is more important than a baby's life. I mean, if you would say, oh yes, the dignity of the IOU must be respected, even if you have to squish a baby. I mean, there's no limit, there's no price too high to pay to preserve the value of that notion of ownership. The rule of ownership. And I'm just saying that's ludicrous. So what we're going to have to get into is the fact that the money is irrelevant. Money is not stuff. Money's not anything. It's crap. It's a placeholder. It's something you use as a wild card, as an identifier for something. But it is not a deed to anything. It's just a temporary deed to something. It's not a real deed to something, if that's a way to put it. So money's irrelevant to the equation. What we're talking about is ownership, control of, possession of deeds. And so in our economy we have a whole bunch of these deeds that are basically where people have bought the future. They own now, they possess a title to the future. And that, I think, is a concept we need to explore, because that makes this whole interest equation really interesting. Because they're not only getting interest on ownership of the stuff that exists now, they're getting interest on ownership of the stuff that doesn't exist yet. And maybe that's the brick wall. Maybe that's the limitation, is that we have now monetized, deederized, is that a word? Created a deed for the limit into the future. I mean, no one would hold a deed for something 200 years from now, right? I mean, how far into the future can these deeds go? There has to be a practical limit where somebody says, I'm not gonna own something 3 zillion years from now that's going to exist 3 zillion years from now. I don't think I'm going to own that. That shouldn't really have any value. That should be a real loser to be holding on to that. So I'm just speculating that maybe this is part of what went wrong here, is that we've exhausted how far into the future you can claim ownership. But I mean, part of that equation would be is just that maybe the bottom line is that we've created so many deeds claiming an entitlement to profit that there's too high a demand on profit. There's too much demand, too big a percentage of productivity is being taken by the people demanding profit. And so I'll throw this into Joe if he's still listening. I mean, yeah, you know, Joe, I'll still make videos. You don't have to make videos in response to me. I mean, I'll still respond to your rhetoric, and I'll just do it in a nasty, hostile, and insulting way, if that's the way you want the argument to go. I made some very valid and good points, and you ignored them and played some superiority game, like you know the truth, and you're the only source. You and Pa figured it all out, and you're the authority on everything. Well, fuck you. I challenged you, and you ran from the challenge. And I'll say again, it's a key point to this fractional reserve crap. The fact is the government is subsidizing the lending of money now. That's the bottom line. And in your world, it won't subsidize it. So it's going to cost more to borrow money. That is a fucking goddamn fact that you haven't refuted. You haven't provided 1 ounce of evidence to demonstrate.